Each of us has our own style and knowledge of what works in the classroom. Each day, our experiences with children guide us to new understandings. Classroom Close-Ups is a series by teachers and for teachers like you, who know that by sharing and learning together, we can help our children and our schools become the best they can be. Profiled in this video series is Bobby Fischer, author and teacher for over 20 years. Bobby has been an active participant in helping to shape some of the most effective early literacy models to have emerged in the latter part of the 20th century. In this video, we're invited to visit Bobby's first grade classroom and see how she organizes and manages her day. Bobby's daily program is divided up into 6 major learning blocks. The day begins with approximately 30 minutes of settling-in time before the class is gathered for their group meeting, which consists of shared reading, songs, and the schedule for the day, among other things. The end of group time transitions children into the writing block. 10:30 is workshop time, where students pursue various topics of study. Notice that the children take a recess break in the middle of this block of time. Math finishes off the morning, and then the children go to lunch. Although reading occurs throughout the day, the last block of time is devoted entirely to reading. At 3:10, the children leave for home. As we follow Bobby through her daily routines, we'll focus on 4 key elements of her program: space and materials, sequence of activities, strategies for organization and management, and the underlying philosophy that guides all processes and interactions during the day. Let's begin by joining Bobby as she explains the space and materials used in the first segment of her day, settling in time.
When the children come in the morning, they come to this table and sign their names here, and we take a lunch count. And then they look at this clipboard to find out the things that I'm particularly asking them to do that day, mainly to get ready for the day. They have to sign in. They sign in on a computer, which is over in the writing area, and they're getting their writing folders ready. Their writing folders are on the tables that they sit at the moment, and they take out the green folder and take out a dictionary and any paper and work that they're working on. They may have to go and get other paper and get pencils. Children at the tables go and get crayons, so they're kind of all set up. One of our school curriculum has to do with properties. So I have a list of the different properties that they might observe. As scientists do, make an illustration and then decide on the color, shape, texture, size, and weight. So they'll work here to do an observation. This is one of the things that we do in math, and I call it box math because the children fill in a box. And about every week, I put some equations on here with a line for them to put their initials. And so sometime during the week, they're supposed to fill in one of these equations. And at the end of the week, we will go through these together. Probably they'll have the Cuisenaire rods with them on the floor, and we'll kind of clear things away. And they'll be working out the equations, and we'll be checking to see if we want to make any changes or not. This is a portable bulletin board that I find very, very useful because I can put different things on it and change it and move it around the classroom as I need to. Right now we have on here word families, and the children will take a piece of paper and put a word family that they think will go with one of the sounds that are mentioned at the top of the paper, and they put it in, and then I will read it. Caroline has wow, so we will talk about where that goes, and then I will write it on there. I like to write it on myself because I really want it to be spelled correctly. I notice that when they come in, it's really important for them to socialize. and just as we as teachers socialize when we first come into the building and have our coffee and chat away, I know the children need that time also. It gives me a time to talk with the kids, the individual children. They can tell me some things, and perhaps I'll get some project going that I think that they might be interested in.
When are we going to work about that thing on ants and spiders?
During workshop.
Instead of your
Well, yeah, if you want to leave your topic and work with me, you don't have to promise. You think you might be interested?
Yeah.
All right. But I also put some suggestions down that they don't have to do, because I don't want that to be a time when they're just doing all of the teachers' ideas, and I want them to have some choice in that time. Is that yours? Wow. Wow. Well, that's a good word for owl. And this is owl for owl, and we've got also O with an O-W. After the children have settled in, we meet at the rug area for literacy and for conversation and for songs and for sharing big books. This is set up, this is where I sit, and I have a teaching easel, and I have the schedule for the day, which is on this piece of paper. And I use this paper throughout the day to write anything that happens to come up that we need to talk about. This is where I hang my songs, some of my songs and my charts along here so I can get them easily, and the children can take them down too. On this bulletin board we have various kinds of words that we are using here and there in our writing. We have some feeling words, some interviewing words when we want to interview someone. Different ways that we respond to literature: I liked, I noticed, I thought. This is a chart about the different kinds of books that we work with: storybooks, information storybooks, and biographies. So this is an important bulletin board just for the children to be able to refer to, and for me to be able to refer to as I'm teaching or as they're even working individually. I have lots of books in my class, and I store them in different ways, depending on what seems to be important for the topic. These are singing books, and we use a lot of singing books, and they're really easy for me to get to, so that if I want to call children over to the rug, I can just pick a book up here and start singing it, and they come over to the rug. I like to use these kinds of books because then children will go back to them and use them again and again, and that's one of the ways that they really practice their reading and learn to read. So we have here counting books, alphabet books, and these are some predictable pattern books that the children are able then, after they've read these during quiet reading or at other times, to put them back so we can locate them again. So there's some order for the books. Along here is where we keep some of the big books, and special books that we may be working on it or are concentrating on during a particular time of the year, and some of the little predictable books along here. I also can hang a lot of my charts here that I might need for different things. This was the book patterns, and sometimes we take these and put them on the floor, so they have to be easy to access. Circle stories. This was a project that a group of us did on seals, sharks, and whales during workshop. And then the other side right now has an African map, so I can use different things, put different things on that, and use that as a teaching center or teaching area. In classrooms like this, it's really hard to find space for everything, so I found that I can hang some things from the ceiling, and one of the things that we hang is the charts with telling every book that we've read in class, and whether it is an information book, a storybook, by the colored dots above each number. If the book is a storybook, we put a red dot. If the book is an information book, we put a yellow dot. If the book is an information storybook, which means that it has a story to it, but it really is giving a lot of scientific or social studies kinds of information, then it's a green dot. And we had those three, and then we started reading biographies. And so we had to get a fourth one, which was the blue for the biography. Are you ready? ready, Brandon? The ants go marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah. The ants go marching one by one. In the morning, after we've had settling in time, I start singing, and that gets the children to come over to the rug. And they sit down on the rug, and they know that's a time they have to pay attention. So the socializing that has gone on previously now has to be focused on some of the group activities that we're going to be working on. This was Don Holdaway's part of his natural learning classroom model, where there's demonstration by the teacher and participation by the children. It's a combination of things that I want to introduce the children to and to have them work on and to think about as far as their literacy development is concerned. It's a time when I might put into some teaching and demonstration some of the things that I've noticed children have been doing as they've been writing or as I've been conferencing with them or reading with them individually. We will read big books. I might read them a story, and there's a discussion of what do you think the story's about and how do you feel about the story. That's a time we might look at some of the text and talk about some of the reading strategies and talk about some of the concepts about print and spelling and vocabulary and the different literacy perspectives. The group time is what I really consider my best teaching time. What do you do when you come to you don't know? Somebody said, I look at the sounds. Raise your hand if you said that. Okay. Raise your hand if sometimes when you're writing or you're reading and you don't know something quite, that you say the sounds to help you figure it out. Raise your hand if that's one of the things that you do. Really trying to draw them into reading and writing for meaningful purposes, because that's really my goal for these children, is so that they can develop as readers and writers for a variety of purposes that they're going to need in their lives. Don Holdaway has been a very important person in my professional life, and one of the things that he has strongly talked about is the community that's developed during a shared reading time, during that shared group time, where we're getting rid of a competitive atmosphere and all children feel that they can participate. If we can have a cooperative environment where there are no hierarchies of somebody being smarter than somebody else or knowing more, and they value just everyone's opinion and everybody's expertise, then children will be willing during their work time and their writing time or their reading time to help each other. And that's what I notice in my classroom, because during shared reading time I try very hard not to single someone out because they have a great idea or because they're a better reader, but that value everyone. And so during writing time, someone will say to somebody, how do you spell something? And somebody says, oh, I know how to spell that, and they spell it. And there's no feeling, oh, I don't know how to spell that, and somebody else does, and one person is smarter than the other. So those are the kinds of caring that I want to have going on. The children that sit at this table keep their writing in this box. This is one of their writing folders, and Brandon is writing rather a long book, so he's got a lot of pieces in here, and when he's through this, he'll put this all together. But this is ongoing work that he's working on. He also has the Have a Go spelling paper. If he wants to know a word that he's not certain how to spell, he spells it, he tries it, and he tries it again. And then he comes to me, and I can talk with him about the correct spelling parts that he has, what letters still need to be there. And if he spells it correctly, I just put a star there, you spelled it correctly, and that really helps him to know, hey, I can spell that, and he gets ownership of that word. And when they have finished a piece of writing, they will take the writing and put it into this file box, which has March writing on it for this month, and we keep that for the month, and then we have a chance to go over it and look at what they've done for the month, and we begin to sort that some more. What we'll do with that writing is the children will pick a few pieces that they really like or they think are really terrific, and they'll file this in this portfolio file, which contains their writing since the beginning of the year, and is wonderful to look at their writing and see the difference from the beginning of the year. So we've got some pieces of writing from the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year we'll put that together in a special portfolio. This is where we keep most of the writing supplies. staplers, and the children know how to fill a stapler, date stamps, the crayons, different kinds of paper. It's really important for kids to have an opportunity to write with different kinds of paper. Sometimes they want to take a lot of lines, and sometimes they want to have a blank piece of paper, and sometimes a few pieces of lines, and depending if they make a book or just a single sheet. We also keep letter strips here so that they can work on writing the letters correctly, and they'll put those at their tables, and some children need to kind of pay attention to that, so we're working on that. If they want to share a piece during sharing time, they put it in the basket, and then I can take it out and I try to keep a record of who shared so that the same people don't share all the time, but they have a choice whether they want to share or not. At the end of writing, we're going to come back with our pieces at the rug, and I'm going to ask you to share with us one or two words that you think are very interesting that help people, if they were just listening to your piece, that they would get a picture in their mind. So you may want to think, before we start writing while we're still with the group, I will sometimes just review a little bit about how writing is going to go, and we might talk about where different children are starting, what are their topics, just to get them back into thinking about their writing. Then they move to their places where they're going to sit for writing, and there's a certain amount of conversation and activity as they settle in. Sometimes during writing, I will ask to have a little bit of silent writing, and that gets children focused for a while and just to stop talking so that they can concentrate and not be distracted. During that time, I choose several things to do. I may just walk around and conference with children. Sometimes I will sit down and really conference with a child and have them come over, and in that case I take notes and record what they've been working on and the kinds of strategies that I have worked on with them during that conference. Sometimes I will even read with children at that time. And sometimes I will work with a small group to do just a literature discussion or work on ear and eye spelling. Dig some more. Who has a word that we could practice? Laura?
Dinosaur.
At the end of writing time, often I will ask them to look at their piece and check it over to see if there's anything they want to add or take away. Today is Tuesday, Tuesday spaghetti, Monday string beans, all you hungry children, come and eat it up. Then they will come to the rug to share in some way. Sometimes they will all bring their own piece and we'll sit in a circle and they share something about the piece. Sometimes somebody will sit in the author's chair and we listen to what they've written and respond to them and tell them what we see, what we heard, and the pictures that we had in our minds, and maybe ask them some questions and tell them things we'd like them to add. So there's a variety of ways that we share. This is another area where we keep a lot of books, and these are used especially during workshop time when the children are exploring science and social studies topics. So we have the books categorized: mammals, weather and space, reptiles, birds, and so on. And as they get new topics during workshop, we begin to add new books and new boxes that are used for a while, and then when we're through that topic, we take them back to the library and we'll get some more. This shelf houses books about a topic that we're working on at the moment. And we're working on Africa right now. This really helps children to begin to think about what books go in what categories. And they know that these are the Africa books, so they put them on there. So they gain some order out of all the many kinds of books that are available for them. One of the things that's really important to me is to try to develop a generative classroom and a generative curriculum in my classroom. And what I mean by that is ideas that I have and that the children have, and sometimes even the prescribed curriculum that the school system has. Those ideas we start with, and they generate other ideas as we learn and as we read and as the children have different projects that they work on. I've got a couple of people working on mountains and the avalanches. Okay. Yeah. All right. Why don't the people that are working on the mummies go on over and sit at the art table over there? My goals during workshop are to have the children be engaged in what they're doing. Because when people, children or adults, are engaged in learning, they will pursue interest as far as they can go. What I find is that children, when they're engaged, will work with each other. I have different children with different reading proficiencies that are working together, and the social problems or issues seem to diminish because they are interested in pursuing information. This is where the math materials are kept, although during math time the children are working all around the room. But we have number bars and tens and ones to be working on place value. We have pattern blocks to be working on patterns. And these are where the manipulatives are stored. They also keep their math journals where they do some writing for math. For math, I'm interested in two things. I'm interested in children understanding math concepts, and so it's very important that they have lots of experiences with manipulatives, with moving different kinds of blocks and using dice in different ways, and because that's how their thinking is going to be flexible and going to they're going to be able to think mathematically. I'm also interested, as they begin to develop, to have them have some of those what we might call basic skills. Math happens throughout the day or at many different times during the day. Sometimes the math class is structured so that about 6 children in a group are working on a different project. These are heterogeneous groups because children learn from each other and can work with each other. And each day a group has a different activity that they will go to.
How are you reading your 12?
1 plus 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. That's 3.
What they're doing right now is one group is working with dice and recording their answers as they get ones and tens and moving into hundreds, because we're working on place value. So that same day, another group will be working in math diaries, and right now they're working on number 14 or 15, which helps their numbers to be organized. Another group is working with 2 dice and a grid with numbers, and they roll the dice, and they either can add or subtract the dice. And then in the little box on the grid, they will write the equation. And the other group actually is working on sounds, and with a hanger and some string, they have a little apparatus, and they're going around and listening to vibrations and recording what they hear as they listen to the vibrations. This is a movable bookshelf, which is very helpful because sometimes when we're really not using it, I can put it out of the way and I can bring out some other kinds of things. This is, I can read books that have big print, because that's really helpful for kids as they're beginning to learn to read. The bigger the print, and they have spaces between, bigger spaces between the words and less text. And some nursery rhymes and poetry books. And then there are some books that we don't categorize. They're just a variety of storybooks. This table is a table that I use when I want to work with individual children. And this basket stays here, and the children put their envelope books, the books that they have worked on from home, and their parents have written, they read these with the parents have written the titles of the books and written if they thought the book was easy or just right or a challenge or too hard, so I have some way to know what the parents are thinking and how the parents are viewing their children's reading. And they put these in here when they bring them from home, and then I will take an envelope, particularly during reading time, although I sometimes have a little time at other times to read with children, and just read with the children, a child individually, and record some of the things that I notice about their work. At this table, when I read with children, I have a file box which has a folder for each child's name, and When I read with them, I take the file out and record on this paper some of the things that I notice the child is doing as he or she is reading. I found that what works so that I get a chance to read with every child and I don't just read with some and not all of them, is that when I've read with a child, I take the folder and I put it this way. When all the files are horizontal, then I know that I've read with every child and I can go back and read and start again so I don't miss anybody. Some children I'll read with more than others because it's really helpful for them that they're reading with an adult. Along this shelf are the little books and books that we use for working with children at their instructional level. These are the books primarily that go home in the envelopes. And as I get to know the children in September, I find out what kinds of text, how much text they can read independently or with a little bit of instruction. So these books are categorized according, at the beginning, just according to the number of words on a page, because that's really important for beginning readers. And then they get more sophisticated and more text on a page. And so children will begin to know when to take the different books that will help them with their instructional purposes. This is a small part of the reading that goes on in the class because they are reading all kinds of things, and when they get ready for quiet reading, they will take books from all over the room, and that's really important. And they will also take a few just kind of at their instructional level, which I say is just take some books to practice your reading. I have reading in the afternoon, and it is divided into 3 parts. The first part is when the children are reading by themselves, and they come in from lunch and get their books and find a place to read where they won't be talking with someone else. Once they begin this silent reading, there are very few things they can do. I've told them you can read, you can look at the pictures, or you can sit and think. But I've tried to eliminate all the distractions that make it harder for them to practice their reading, because that's what I tell them I want them to be doing. They don't get out of their seats. They are not to talk with each other and do a lot of switching of books back and forth. This gives me, right now in March, 20 to 25 minutes of quiet time when I can read individually with children. After quiet reading, not every day, but on some days the children write in journals. At the end of that, people who want to read what they've written share it, and then I take those journals home and I respond to them. There are several important elements in my reading program, but I really need to say that we read throughout the day. So although I have some specific things I do that we might consider a reading program, it's really important that the children are reading throughout the day in many different ways. I think it's important for children to have chances to hear someone read to them, for them to practice reading and read to themselves, and for them to read with other children.
Rainforest, rainforest, this is what we know. Rainforest, rainforest, this is what we know.
I have a model that I use for organizing my day and for organizing various parts of my day, and it comes from work of Don Holdaway, who looked at children learning to talk and said, what are those conditions that we can put in to a classroom for reading and for literacy that works so well for children in the home learning to talk? Children learning to talk need times for demonstrations, and they need time when they can participate, and then they need time to practice, and they need time to perform or share what they do. So in my classroom, I have some times when I demonstrate and the children are participating, and one of the focal points of that time is during shared literacy or times when we're at the group. So I do a lot of demonstrating. I think it's very, very important. I'm a teacher, and I know some things that children don't know, and I know some things about children at the age that I'm teaching that would be appropriate for them. And I also watch children as they write and as they read, and they give me a lot of cues of some of the things that I might want to demonstrate in the group time. During that group time, it's a combination of my choices of what I want to demonstrate and leads that I get from them, and they're participating. Then they need time to practice without the demonstrator there, without me looking over their shoulders all the time. So during work time, writing workshop, reading time, when children are working independently or working with friends, that's when they're practicing. And I know that they're learning even though I'm not sitting there and watching them every minute or even seeing each piece that they write. They also need times to share. They need time to say, look what I did, this was great, because we know that little children do that too. And so I build in sometimes in the day when we will sit at the rug and we have some sharing times and maybe one or two people share or lots of children share. They also share with their friends. And sometimes they're just sharing by coming up to me and speaking with me. Developing a classroom like this takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and you know what? It's never finished. There's always more to be doing. I start the first day of September with the routines. I'm very certain on that first day that we have the routine that we're going to be using throughout the year. I have a lot of high expectations that the children can handle it. A lot of this, has to do with trusting kids. That when you trust them, they will do an enormous amount. What happens is when children get really engaged in their learning, then they want all these things to go well. Because they want to learn. They want to do their writing. They don't want to be disturbed. It's an ongoing experience, and it's really an important part of the process. If we don't help these children at a very young age, first grade and certainly before, to be able to make decisions and take responsibility for running their lives, whatever it is, and that includes hanging their coats up and deciding what they're going to write and the whole gamut, it's going to be hard for them in 5 or 6 years. The decisions they're going to have to be making are enormous. And we don't just learn to make a decision overnight. We really have to have some opportunities and experiences that are really appropriate for them at a certain age. So I'm really committed to that.